stable's cold and gray. Shadows dance while horses softly neigh. He tells the creatures in the barn each night that one day he'll wear armor shining bright. From dawn to dusk he works with honest hand, feeding mares and working on the land. But he has his heart set on the table round to join the knights who bravely serve the crown. With a sword and shield he'll join the fight, prove his worth before it's Christmas night. He'll show them all as he sets out on his quest, a gift to himself, a night before Christmas. With a sword and shield he'll join the fight, prove his worth before it's Christmas night. He'll show them all as he sets out on his quest, a gift to himself, a night before Christmas. But chivalry demands self-sacrifice, and when folks need help, this boy does not think twice. He meets the need, though it cost him his dream. But maybe things are more than they seem. With a sword and shield he'll join the fight, prove his worth before it's Christmas night. He'll show them all as he sets out on his quest, a gift to himself, a night before Christmas.
In a world where terrors creep, monsters need their beauty sleep. Dr. Black with steady hand heals the beasts across the land. Vampires and creatures of the night find their savior in Black's light. No more horror guarantee, thanks to Monster MD. Electric bolts from a stormy sky, leather wings of a dragon's flight. A psychic sword cuts through the night, a fiery heart standing ready to fight. Southern nights they rise and soar, God in the south, yeah, they're ready to roar. From the shadows to the shining lights, that they'll protect you day and night. Southern nights. On a catwalk, Teresa struts her stuff, but the fame and attention just isn't enough. When the darkness descends, turning day to night, she takes to the skies with a blinding light. She's a sight to behold, sexy and powerful, brazen and bold. She's turning up for the fight, rooting out evil and shining so bright.
And good evening, everybody. I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at Critical Blast Publishing, myopic proofreader, and also the Chief Envelope Licker for Critical Blast Fulfillment. And tonight we are going to talk with yet another creator in the indie sphere. You know, for being such a small niche industry, I keep meeting new people every single week. So there's a lot of you people out there making small comics, small press books. So tonight, please welcome to the stage Mr. Braxton A. Cosby. Braxton, how are you tonight?
I'm great. How are you doing? Thank you for having me on the show.
Glad to do it. I see you've got the cape on your shirt. That's not any place you visited. That is one of your books.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. One of our franchises, superhero
Always
fiction.
do marketing. I love superhero fiction. Now, by that you mean no pictures. It's straight up text, right?
No, actually, it's a little bit more impressive than that. We, Cosby Media Productions, we have like over 30 authors with 60 different titles in ebook, audiobook, and paperback. And one of our series, because we do feel like we specialize in fantasy and science fiction, but one of our worlds that we created is the superhero universe called the Cosby Media Productions Dedicated Superhero Universe, which is a CMPDSU.
That's a mouthful.
And that has been contrived of over. Yes. That's why we break it down to the acronym. 6 different authors with 18 different titles, different novels. And we've also recently, since 2021, started our own comic imprint, Star Child Comics. And we've since then added 12 comic books in that short time span. And that's about 5 superhero novels that kind of expand our already popular universe of novels.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the very basic question. And why would you sit there and say you're young, your whole life's ahead of you, and you're like, I'm going to break into publishing while I can still afford to go broke?
Right. Well, we've been doing this since I started Cosby Media Productions back in 2014. So we've been doing publishing for over 10 years. And when we got to the turn of kind of 2020 time, when COVID was hitting, we had this superhero universe we had created, and we were like, man, what do we do next? As far as like advancing the genre. And this crazy idea came to me of like, why don't we try comic books? We go to a lot of conventions, and we saw a lot of indie publishers out there, individual creatives just doing their own thing with comic books. And I was like, man, I've always wanted a comic book. I grew up in that time period. I was like, man, this would be really, really cool. So let's go ahead and add comic books to what we do. And we came up with Star Child Comics, which is a derivative of my series, the Star-Crossed Saga, that deals with star children, these children of the sun. And I was like, let's just call it Star Child Comics. So that was really cool. And man, it ended up just becoming something greater than I even imagined. So we then kind of transformed our company into a hybrid publisher, where we say now we no longer just give you novels, paperback, hardcovers, and ebooks. And audiobooks. We have the audio, we have the reading, and we also have the visual now to go with that in the comic book. So like my series, Steel Rain, which is a bounty hunter series, ended up being a finalist for the American Legacy Book Awards. That novel has a prequel comic book that kind of leads you into the series. And I've also done the same thing with my series Broken, which you see behind me, was my dystopian young adult fiction series. Book 1 is the novel, book 2 is the comic book. And my latest release is book 3, which is the graphic novel, which is over a 60-page graphic novel.
We have a couple of links to that right below the video here, folks. It'll take you straight to the Amazon page. So do check that out.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And so as a publisher, are you your own printer, or do you broker with other printers? Because when you go to comics from novels, it's a different playing field.
Yeah. We basically partner with, like, we do KDP stuff through Amazon to publish our novels. We also publish with Barnes and Nobles as well. I have pretty good relationships with some of the managers in the Southeast. So I do book signings there. We just released, I co-wrote a children's book with my daughter, who's 12 years old. And we did a nice book signing with that earlier in November. And so as far as the comic books, we use Comics Wellspring, and that's not an advertisement. I just really love their quality. The paper is great quality. The turnaround times are fast, and I enjoy our partnership with them. So yeah, so I don't have to have an individual printer, but we have partnerships with people who do the hard work that I really don't want to get involved in.
Yeah, I've handled quite a few Comics Wellspring projects. We're a fulfillment company, so they send us cartons all the time and stuff. Quality material.
Absolutely.
Again, not an advertisement, but certainly not going to tell you not to look at them.
Absolutely.
So what caused you to go into publishing, though? I mean, I know we talked about you went into it in 2014, but what was there, like, when it was career day at school,
right?
And people were like, I want to be a fireman, I want to be, go in the Army. Did you always want to be a writer and a publisher, or was there an event that you said, hey, I like what I'm seeing here, can I do this?
Yeah. I would say it was. I'm a physical therapist by trade. I tell people in the daytime I'm a physical therapist. At night I'm a writer. Really more of a creative too. But what happened is that when I was in college, I hated multiple choice tests. I called them multiple guess. It always confused me. I was always in between two answers and really wasn't sure. I hated doing that. But anything that I ever took, any class I took that was essay format, I got A's. It was nothing less than A's. It was my English, world history, the whole 9 yards. If it had to do with me kind of just explaining something, I would get an A. So I kind of felt like I had a little bit of a gift in writing, but I never went anywhere with it. I graduated, went into physical therapy, was working, doing, whatever. And it was back in 2010 when I was at a church service one time, and the pastor was saying, like, he really felt like God was kind of calling people out of the wilderness to do something that they may have never done before, but like nobody was really asking. And I just kind of just felt this presence, like saying, hey, what would you want me to do, God? I just kind of threw the question out there, and I distinctly heard a voice say, write a novel. And I'm like, what? It's something very foreign. I had no idea about it, Now, if you would imagine back in this time period, this is when stories like Twilight was really popular, and all these young adult novels were just booming. These movies were booming with the novels and things like that. And I wanted to write a young adult novel. And so I said, well, what would I write on? And I heard this voice kind of saying, like, I was a big movie buff. I love stories. And it was like all those, sometimes you may see a movie and you'll say, man, that was really cool, but I wish they had kind of gone this way with it or that way with it. And God was like, put those things in your book, all those cool ideas you had, So I was like, man, okay, I can do that. I started just outlining this story and went home and researched what it took to publish, how you can get your book really written, and then try to get it with a publisher. And so I started writing it and outlining it. And then before you know it, I had written this 90,000 word, not page, word.
Still a good. I knew what you meant, but that's still a good start.
Yeah, 90,000 word novel, and I saw it as a trilogy from the beginning. And I'm like, what do I do with it now? And then a friend of mine was telling me that she knew a local publisher who was in Atlanta, and I reached out to them. And that's when you could reach out to publishers directly back in the day. Now you need an agent, and you really need a whole lot more than that to get it going. And she was like, sure, send it to me. So I sent it over to her, Firefly Publishing, shout out to them. And she liked it. And she said, I'll publish it for you. And we went into that whole publishing process. So my initial script was 5 months to write a manuscript. After that, we went through like 2 months of editing, came up with cover ideas. And I used a friend of mine who was a cover artist, and we submitted to her. She liked it. She dug it. And then before you know it, the book was out within a year. And I had my first published novel. It ended up, I was Protostar, book one of the Star-Crossed Saga, ended up winning Book of the Year for young adult sci-fi romance with Reader's Favorite. So that was like, I ended up getting CLC Book of the Year, the Children's Literary Classic Book Award as well for young adult. And I was like excited, like, man, this is great. And then within a year, she actually closed shop. She was done publishing. So I'm like sitting here now with this award-winning book. I'm like, what do I do with this now? I ended up shopping that around, got it picked up with another publisher, then they picked up the sequel. And then we just kind of started having a little disagreement on some designs and where the direction of the story was going. And I was like, look, maybe this isn't the right fit. And I took the rights back, and I requested the rights back, and then started saying, you know what? I think I kind of learned this industry a little bit. I'm going to do this myself, And that's what I did. I went up and become a small press company, Cosby Media Productions. And we have just grown so much since then. And I will tell you that I have never once put out a call for a publisher. I never asked anybody. People just always threw word of mouth and say, hey, my friend published with you guys. Would you be interested in looking at a manuscript? I do go through that process with my editors. We decide if we're going to go with the novel or not. And it's just always been that way. So it's been great. And we're just, I feel like we're a partner with authors. I know what it takes to be an author. I grind with everybody. I've written over 20 novels myself, so I know that process of creating your own baby and wanting people to like it. And so I really partner with authors. We have really very nice royalty contracts, because I only take on a project if I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be worth time, if it's going to be entertaining, or even have the option of going further into another medium, maybe it's animation, maybe it's film, maybe it's TV, I only take those types of stories. So I really love the unique stories. And I think we just have a fantastic stable of fantasy. If you guys are into dragons and fantasy and urban fantasy, anything with mythology, science fiction, hardcore sci-fi, light sci-fi. We've also got superhero fiction. Like I said, we've got a ton of stuff. And I just think that people will really be intrigued with the stories we tell. I try to find stuff that's unique to put out there that I haven't really read yet. And I think we've done a good job of doing that.
You mentioned how God led you to write your first novel. Do your books go from a Christian perspective or from an uplifting perspective? Is it sort of this superversive thing that we hear about in a lot of fiction now?
I think for me, I'm a Christian, so I just live out my life in my stories. I don't put a lot of sex and cursing in the stories. Now, in science fiction, I have created my own curse words, sort of say, but it's not the traditional stuff. Instead of one F word, it might be fook. It'd be a little bit derivative of that, but I try to keep it. And I think like I say, in the way I live my life, I want to inspire people. You know what I mean? So that stuff is in there, not necessarily have any scripture, but the morals to the stories are there. And I think even if it wasn't that, I'm a big student of writing. So I've taken courses in writing. I've read books on writing. I also write screenplays. So I've learned 3-act structure, and I utilize 3-act structure as the blueprint for my writing. So my novels have 3-act structure. My screenplays have 3-act structure, and even my comic scripts, which is a huge undertaking because you're trying to cram 3 acts into one 24, 27-page comic with all those panels and all those pages. And I love the challenge because it's such a beast to wrestle with. But once you get it done and you got those pages jumping off the page, you got those images jumping off the page, and you got that story moving in such a way that is tried and true storytelling with 3-act structure that started way back in the day when the Odyssey, that's the first utilization of 3-act structure. I mean, it's just amazing stuff. And so I think the whole story of the hero's journey is Christianity in a nutshell, Even
though Joseph Campbell just looked at Christ as another corn king myth, it was like, come on, guys.
Right. So
yeah. So Wayne's letting the cat out of the bag here a little bit. He says, you can talk to the master himself, Critical Blast. I'm probably no. Tonight we're Critical Blast Promotions.
Right.
We're a publisher too, is what he's trying to
Absolutely.
say. So we're kind of peer talking, shop talking here.
Absolutely.
Now. So I'm picking your brain. I'm listening to what you're saying, and so I can say, are we doing that? Are we doing this? But I do wish that people would get back to 3-act structure with comic books,
Right.
because it's like technically
Absolutely.
they probably are, but like
Man.
that first act is going over the first 7 issues of something, and then the story expands. Condense it back down to the 24 pages, guys.
Right.
Learn how to write comics again, people.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I know no harm meant there, Wayne, and I owe you a phone call. I got your voice messages. Every time you called me yesterday, I had fried chicken in my hands. I couldn't answer.
Oh man, you're not gonna put that down.
No, I was like, I'd smear my phone up and everything. So,
Right.
and both times, lunch and dinner. And I just didn't get back to you. But so I'm gonna bring your website up here because you do have Cosby Media Productions, and the website is cosbymediaproductions.com. And because I discovered this after I made the comments below the video, that link's not there. So I'm going to throw it out into the chat and just toss it up here for people to see. Now, who would go here to this website and what would they find? What would they be looking for if they came to the production company?
If they came here, they would just scroll down, and we make it very simple for people to find what they're looking for. We have like our editors' picks, our books. We have our new releases. We have our comic books, as you see there. And if you just kind of like, well, what am I looking for? Where should I do? If you scroll down a little bit more, you're just going to see tabs that say what the genre is that you like to read. So You'll see fiction, you'll see young adult fiction, you'll see fantasy, you'll see music, rap fiction. We also have science fiction. So you have all those things that you can just click on. And when you click on any one of those tabs, it will take you to a collection of our novels that are under that genre of writing.
Let's take a look.
Mm-hmm.
So I clicked on the young adult. I remember when I was big into the young adult when I was a middle-aged adult. It seemed like that was where all the cool stories were happening for a while.
Really were. Absolutely.
So you got the affiliated. Now these are all different authors. These are not these are not you.
Yep, these are
writing
authors,
everything. And I'm seeing the different kinds of story. I'm seeing horror. I'm seeing sports.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you double list something? Say somebody turns in a really good horror story with teenagers learning about coming of age. Do you list that in both young adult and horror, or young adult and fantasy, sci-fi?
Yeah, I try to figure out what's the main theme of the story, because a lot of coming to age is like, man, coming of age is like, people think it's only for young people, but there's a lot of adults coming of age. They're still trying to get their life together, So I try to just say, okay, what's the overall background of this story, and then we just kind of go with it, with that vibe, and then people kind of get what they want out of the story once they start to dive in.
Some of these look well. That sounds condescending. Now, when I say some of these look interesting, because it means that some of them don't. But some of these are really grabbing my attention.
Good.
Jack and Hyde. That looks like something
that is such an amazing story. Oh my God. Cloud Riser wrote this great young adult story, and it's so unique with these clones, these kids who are being cloned, and it's just, I love it. I've listened to the audiobook, and it's just amazing. And that's the sequel there with Kaylee and Claire.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that grabs me. Back when I was reading all the young adult stuff, I think the one that stuck with me was one by Neil Shusterman called Unwind. Talking about somebody else's books now, I know. But,
right.
It was all about retroactive abortion.
Wow.
As a concept.
Wow.
Like, you have to have the kids, but when they reach 16, you can determine whether or not it was worth it or not.
Wow.
And if it wasn't, and the reason they could do it was because they had perfected the technology to eliminate transplant rejection.
Okay.
So as long as 98% of the body was used for transplant, it was technically still alive.
Wow.
It was just in a dissociated state.
Right.
So,
wow.
And that, that includes brain slices and everything. So it was it was the kind of stuff that made you think, and that's the kind of stuff I look for here with something like what we just described here with Cloud's book.
So this is Protostar. This is book 1 of the Starcrossed Saga. That's mine.
Now, is this the first one you did?
That's the first book.
So this is where it was all began, right here.
It all began. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you talked about one of the things you look for when you pick a title to go with is you look for opportunities to possibly go into other media with it.
Right.
Has that happened with anybody?
I would say this. Protostar was actually, the storyline was used twice.
Okay.
Without consent. I'll just say
that kind of thing.
There was a CW show where they took it and then they took the bones of it and then they went another way, kind of stretched it a little bit. And so it happened. No big deal. That is what happens in industry. It is what it is,
Sometimes two people come up with the same thought.
Right.
But
they actually contacted me after they did it. That was what was really interesting.
Okay. Well, hopefully they said, "Hey, we just found your book. Man, we're sorry. Here's a check."
And they invited me to one of it wasn't South by Southwest. It was one of those other shows to screen it. And I'm like, this doesn't sound right. But long story.
Yeah, I just got a story like that last night in our news feed from a law company where somebody was suing several different directors and Netflix over that movie that came out last year, Don't Look Up,
Okay.
where they were like, yeah,
Yeah, I
and he's
remember
like,
that.
this is my book. This is the million
Wow.
day forecast.
Wow.
And so that's now in courts. It and apparently he and the director both went to the same high school and did a class presentation,
Oh my
career
gosh.
day thing. So there is proximity where this could have bled
Mhm.
over because he talked about his book and it was already
Wow.
published too.
Wow. Woo.
Do you have the ear of anybody at Netflix? I mean, do you have somebody as a publishing company? And it sounds like you got a lot more people working for you than I do. Do you have somebody whose job it is to look for media potential?
I'll be real honest with you. At first, man, it was this run I had. I was talking, I don't know if you remember the show. It was a TV network. It's gone now. It was called started with an S. What is the name of that network? It wasn't like Stripe TV. It was something. I can't remember the name of them right now. But I mean, I had the iron was really hot. I was meeting people. I was talking with people about getting, I had a contract to get Protostar produced into a film, a like $30 million contract. And once you've gone through that whole route and people just kind of just spaz on you at the end and don't come through, I kind of lost the flair for it. I would love it, if somebody came along who was really tried and true about doing it. So I still keep the same idea of basically taking on the only books that I feel have next level potential. But like that drive to have all those conversations go through, I'm not really into that as much as I used to be anymore. Now I just want to write stories that I really enjoy, that I think other people will enjoy, and that's just how I go about it.
So, would somebody come to the website here if they wanted to pitch their book?
They could. I have contact us there. If they hit contact us, they could easily give us some information on what they wanted to do and what they were interested in. Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to go to the storefront. I'm going to look at the
Okay.
comic books
Yep.
because that's what we talk about a lot on this show. And we're, by the way, being simulcast over on the Madness Network, which is all about comics related madness.
Very cool.
So,
as you can see, Bark is part of Daniel Payton's 3-book superhero series called as Bark. So there's 3 novels, and then the comic book is essentially the novel 4 in a comic book form. ANVK. That's another one. The ANVK, African Ninja Vampire Killers by Arthur Arthur Kayo Champion. That's an individual IP that he just started, and man, that story is wild. It is really, really cool. Takes place in Johannesburg, Africa.
Oh wow! Okay, that's a good, interesting place to set a vampire story.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, here's Broken. That's yours.
Yep. Broken, as you can see, there's 3 factions on the reflection on Kisa's little blade there.
Now, writing comic books, because you've written novels, was it difficult to make the transition to write for a comic book? Because I've written an 8-page comic story one time, and I said I'd rather write another 100,000-word novel than do that.
It is, but I tell you what, I had a fantastic book that I use as a template for script writing for comic books, and once I got into the practice of it a few times, it became one of the most rewarding processes of my life in writing, is cramming that 3-act structure into a novel. Into a comic book, because the challenge is so great. It's the same percentages. If you got 24 pages, first 10% is like really like 15% is like maybe pages 1 through 5 is your act 1. You got to capture that. You got to have that character ask that main question, decide if they're going to have the debate, if they're going to go on the journey or not, make the journey, jump into act 2 and start rolling. And so you're looking at maybe pages 6 through 18 now as your act 2. And then now you start to wrap this thing up between 19 and 24 in your act 3. So that challenge, plus using all the tips and trades that make comic books successful on the way you design your panels, the shots, if it's a floor up shot, top down shot, over the shoulder shot. The tone has to be there. Broken is such an emotional story that a lot of the shots are very close up, so you can see the emotion in the characters' faces and the eyes. And I partnered with a fantastic artist, Romulo Silva from Brazil. He did an amazing job of just really working. So you become the director of photography, you become the producer, you become everything, because all those shots matter. There's no wasted shots. And if you work with a fantastic artist who can bring it to life, it's just so amazing. When those new pages roll in after you've written that script for that page, and you look at it, you go, wow, I was so excited, because I promise you that every time I turned in a page and the artist came back with the inks on it, it was greater than what I imagined. So I was never dissatisfied. So I was really blessed.
Yeah, you've got to write like an art director, almost like you're writing a letter to the guy saying, "Hey,
Absolutely.
can you do this?" And when they're doing
Absolutely.
this, they got to look like this.
Yep.
And that 3-act structure. I mean, some of the best writers out there, and I look at people like Alan Moore, who really understand what they're doing with the medium. You get that 3-act structure on each page, because you got to have you've got with writing, you just write to the end of the chapter.
Right.
Because you don't know whether it's going to be 5x8, 6x9,
Right.
What font they're going to use. You do. You're the publisher now. But
Right.
but with a comic book, is like, this panel's going to be at the bottom of this page, and I have to make them want to turn the page after they read
exactly right. Absolutely. Yep.
So you've got all that. It's every single page is its own story, pretty much.
Yeah.
Or it ends on its own cliffhanger.
Absolutely.
So, I don't want to do it again. I will. But I'm not looking forward to it.
And I tell you, when it comes, you're a publisher, right? So you know about marketing. People come to the table at a convention, they pick up the comic book. The first thing they do is look at the cover. Okay, this looks cool. The next thing is the comic books have a tendency to open on their own to the middle, right?
Yes.
So I'm also
some of them do.
I'm strategically thinking that if I hand somebody the comic book and the first thing they do is open up to the middle, I want those 2 pages to be amazing. So I'm automatically thinking like, okay, if I'm writing a 24-pager, right around page 12 and 13, man, this better look amazing, because that's what, it opens up there more naturally than any other page. And when it does, people go, whoa, wow, okay, what's going on here? And then they're interested in picking up the comic.
Yeah, because you're going with Comics Wellspring, and they they use staples.
Yes.
and we don't. All of ours are perfect bound, so it has less of a chance of opening up right to the middle.
Okay, I got you.
And it's a different market. We've had people say, "Hey, you know what? I want to take my comic somewhere else," because they like glossy pages,
right,
and they like staples. So we've had more than a couple, but it's the business. It is what it is.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what's new with Cosby?
The newest
what's the thing we're looking for next?
The newest thing is, like I said, I just released Broken Book 3, which is the graphic novel, 60-page graphic novel, which expands on the story of Broken and Kisa's struggle coming out of. So Broken is one of these crazy stories. The year 2035, all-out nuclear war across the planet. Those who survive really have wiped out like 90% of the population. Those who survive go to the coastlines for fresh water, try to rebuild everything. There's no currency anymore. It doesn't matter. So this one faction conglomerate called the Establishment comes along, this military conglomerate, and they actually start to enslave people. It doesn't matter about ethnicity or anything. It's a class-based system. You don't have to. You're a slave, and people become currency. So they trade for things. This one young lady named Kisa has been separated from her parents. She's now a surrogate mother to her younger brother, Kieran, who's 11. She's 16, and she's living in this slave pod in Savannah. And one day an opportunity comes where she has an opportunity to escape, and she does. And that sends her out into the Badlands, where of the 10% of people who have survived the initial nuclear war, people ingest the ashes, and a percentage of those people become crazy and become what we call ashers. So they're like the Walking Dead. Another percentage of the population becomes hoarders. They're like the whole Mad Max, kind of ravage the land for resources, kill you on sight kind of a thing. And of course, then you've got the establishment. So Keisha's trying to navigate her way of just kind of getting out into the world and trying to live. And if it wasn't for her brother Kieran, she would have killed herself by now because she's just been through so much. So it's a really powerful novel. That was just kind of like novel one. And then she finally runs into she hears the whispering of this group called the Resistance that's out there that is thinking about trying to overthrow the establishment. And then she runs into them in the comic book. So because the novel was so in depth, it really talked about Kisa and the world building and really talked more about the establishment and the hoarders to some extent, because she does get captured by the hoarders. I really wanted to give people an opportunity to see the Ashers on display. So we gave a lot of great action in these sequences in the comic book. And then now we can settle back down with the graphic novel and do a little bit more storytelling and build on these relationships that she's established now with the Resistance.
Yeah, because you had mentioned that you knew it was going to be a trilogy.
Yeah,
but
that was
technically
Protostar.
You've got 3 books now.
This is going to be Protostar was a trilogy. I mean, a Star-Crossed Saga was a trilogy. This kind of took on a life of its own. I did, like I said, the novel, then the comic book, which was 27 pages, then the 60-page graphic novel. The next one is going to be a novella. So we'll add a little bit more storyline again, and then I'll probably end it. I haven't figured out what I'm going to end it with yet, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards going back to the comic just to kind of put a stamp on it.
Okay. Well, is there anything that you'd like people to know about Cosby Media Productions that we haven't covered? Anything you're like? I got my notes right here. As soon as he asked, we're ready to go. Because you know you better than I know you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing is I want people to understand is that, like I said, we're a hybrid publisher. You're going to get opportunities to get great stories in both novels and comics, and they'll go back and forth, so you get options. If you're into comic books, you'll pick up a comic. At the back of that comic, we actually have a QR code where you can scan if you really like the story. Because I try to challenge the writers to write the story of the comic as if it can be a standalone, but you have so many of these Easter eggs in there, it's going to make people say, well, I want to go back to the origin. Where did this whole thing start? And we have a link right there that you can scan and see the novels that are associated with that comic. In the turn of the year, we're excited right now. We're doing AMVK is like a manga comic. So we're already kind of stepping into the realm of manga, but we actually have our big fighting robot manga story called Nexus Astrum, which is going to be, again, there's novels already associated. The author is Chris Macaulay. He has done work on this Stokerverse, and he's also done some things with I don't know if you remember the old show back in the day, Babylon 5.
Yes, Claudia Christensen.
Yeah, he's written. It's called, I think, Dark. I can't remember this Dark series. It's some kind of a series of novels, and she's a part of it. He's written with some comic book stuff. So he came aboard, and he has his own individual story he wanted to do with Nexus Astrum. We've got the novel. The novel will be coming out next year along with the comic book. It's a 20-page comic, and we're already gotten 15 of those done. So I'm excited to really dive into the whole manga era with big robots and fighting robots in this universe that he's created. I'll be dropping the sequel to the Cape Hellfire, which basically the Cape is book 1 and 2 that I wrote. The comic book is book 3. And then when we brought all of our authors together for our first crossover in the novels, we got Infinity 7, book 1 and 2. And Infinity 7 is kind of like our Avengers Assemble. So we actually have 14 different superheroes in one novel. And I co-wrote that with Keyshawn Dodds and Kaio Champion. So I was finally able to, as we wrapped up that series, I was able to bring out the sequel to the Cape Hellfire, which is now the main character Paladin kind of handing that mantle off to this young group called the Fab Five. So I'm excited about that. So that will be coming out in December. So, I mean, we just got stuff rolling every time. And I think people are going to really be excited with when they come to the website and just kind of play around and click on stuff. I think they'll find something that they're interested in reading.
Always have something on the front burner that's ready to go. So it sounds like you're keeping busy, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
God bless. It's it can keep you up at nights, but
yeah,
yes, I think it's worth it. And one day we'll make money at it.
That's right. And I think I tell people all the time. I said, So I'm looking down the road, right? If nothing else, when I retire, I'll just keep writing because it's going to keep my brain fresh.
Yes.
I'm not trying to get Alzheimer's or anything like that, but I know that we've already got research in that realm of people. The more you use your brain later in life, the better off you are, fighting off senility and all those other things. So I just love storytelling now. I'm so excited. And it's just ingrained in me with continuing to write my next favorite novel. I tell people all the time, my challenge to me is I write another book. I want it to be my next favorite book. And I've been great. I've been really blessed that has happened, even with Broken. Like I really love this series, and I'm already looking at the next one to start writing. So it's always just a pleasure of writing, getting the books out. And you know how it is when you publish something, you get it in your hand and you go like, "Ooh, we did this," and it's a special moment.
Oh, yes, because it just looks so good.
Yes,
I'm because of the situation of the interview, I'm fighting off the temptation, like grabbing this book and showing it, and grabbing this book and showing it. We got new ones in, and like, no, this is his show.
That's right.
Don't have your own show.
Appreciate it.
But especially that first book though. I remember before I was a publisher, I was an author, and when you have a publisher say, "Hey, we're gonna buy the book, and we're gonna put it out," that's when you're like, "Yes, I've made it."
Right.
and I remember I had when my first two books were done, I always had copies of them at work, and somebody said, "Hey, who's this guy?" Because I write under, like,
Okay.
"Who's this other guy?" I'm like, "Oh, those are mine." Yeah, but who? No, they're mine. And it was always the same thing. It's like, why are you working here if you've got books? Like, well, because Stephen King and J.K. Rowling, they take so much of the paycheck that there's not much left for the rest of us here. So as soon as they retire, I'll get.
Understood how publishing works, right?
Yes. Everyone thinks you published a book. You've made it.
Yeah.
Quit your job. No, don't quit your job.
No.
Keep working.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight, man. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Hope to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And everybody in the chat, thank you guys for being here. We don't have a show without you. We're just a podcast falling in the woods otherwise. So we're happy that you're here. And as always, while you were here, we just hope you had a blast. Good night, everybody.
Bye.